Okay. So can everyone hear me all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we'll kick this off. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. And I hope everyone is enjoying the dog days of summer, as they say, for those starting back up in academic 21-22. Hope the transition getting back is more exciting than anxiety inducing for all of you. I know this time of year is a really big rush. So we're really fortunate today to have such an experienced career consultant, Daphne Woolf, provide us with a special presentation and give us an opportunity for all of your Q&A from our Schulich Leader Network, of course. We'll look at the current state of the job market amidst the pandemic and what you can do to better prepare yourself for your next job search. We'll wait, I guess, until after Daphne's presentation to open it up to Q&A. A brief bio on Daphne, who has spent 25 plus years working in corporate environments on the hiring, development, and internal movement of employees. And she's worked with all levels of employee management and executive leadership, including the managing director at SPB Organizational Psychology, senior consultant, talent management at Right Management, national practice lead, talent management and engagement at Aon Hewitt, and managing partner of the Colin Bear Group, as well as national partner at Mercer Canada. And Daphne specializes in the 18 to 34 demographic, which of course is right where our Schulich leaders reside. So this will be a very applicable session, and we hope we find great value in it. I know we will. So I'm going to pass it over to Daphne to share her screen and begin the presentation. Thanks so much, Daphne, and everyone for joining us.
Great. Thanks, David. Everyone can hear me, I'm sure. Let me see some nods on the screen, if you can hear me okay. Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. Amazing. So what I'm going to do is, in a Zoom environment, it's easier. Oh, I think we need to mute everybody, David.
Sorry, ma'am, your mic off. Your mic is off.
Yeah, Daphne, sorry, we just have to unmute you there. Yep.
Am I
Go
unmuted?
for it.
Are we still hearing me?
Unmuted.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Good. Thanks, Charles. So what we're going to do is I'll do the presentation without interruption, which is unusual for me because when I do a presentation, typically I'm in person and I love the questions as we go through. But just because of Zoom and I think the expediency of using the hour best, I'm going to run through the presentation and then I'll stop, obviously, and use the balance of our time for Q&A. All right. And I'll encourage you to use the chat line to ask me your questions so that, your voice can be heard and we aren't talking over each other. Sometimes that's difficult when there's a large group. All right. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And I think we're good. I'm just going to go to full screen. Great. All right. So David, I can see you. Can you just nod your head? Are we good on the screen?
Yes, everything looks good.
Amazing. Perfect. All right. So we're looking at preparing you for job search. And whether you are graduated recently or you are soon to be graduating, I think what I'm going to share with you is going to be helpful regardless of the timing for you in terms of searching. So why don't we just start by my sharing a sort of a fundamental, all right? Oops, how come it's not, hang on, there we go. So in order to navigate the job market, there are really three core criteria. The first is you need to be absolutely fearless. So don't be afraid to talk to anyone at any level, at any time, in any way. So fearlessness is number one trait that I need you to bring to the table. The second one is it'd be great for you to be inventive. Look at different ways of communicating, look at different ways of expressing yourself, Feel free to be creative in how you reach out to people. Inventive is good because that's how you'll be memorable. And the last thing is, unfortunately, there are some people who will disregard your outreach and ignore you once, twice, maybe 3 times or more. And so you need to be persistent and you need to be resilient. So we're looking for fearlessness, we're looking for you to be inventive, and we're looking for you to be persistent. And if you bring all those 3 things, 3 qualities to the table, you're going to start making some progress in this job market. Okay. Now, to say that traditional ways don't work is a strong statement. I would say traditional ways of looking for work aren't as successful as maybe taking a different approach. And that's just because a lot of the job market is hidden. So usually the go-to is a job posting of some kind. That it's funny to say that's traditional because, a long time ago before the internet, that really wasn't how you even look for jobs. But the traditional approach today, your first go-to is the job sites. But now much of the job market is hidden. Okay. And so when we look at jobs, all right, let's talk about where they're found. Okay. So 15% of jobs are found through recruiters, and recruiters hire people largely from 3 categories. Recruiters are interested in executives. So I'm sure you've all heard of executive recruitment. So executives are often hired through recruiting. Commodity hires are often hired through recruiters. Commodity hires are manpower, laborers, clerical staff, temporary staff, often found through recruiters. And the other category that recruiters are focused on largely are experts. So people who have a very specific area of expertise. If you were an aerospace engineer, if you are an architect, if you, for example, have deep expertise in pharma or the hospital sector, recruiters are focused in areas where there is also deep expertise. Since a lot of individuals, a lot of young adults are coming into the job market more at an entry level point without deep expertise behind them, recruiters aren't your best bet. And they can be a big waste of time if you're spending a lot of time going with recruiters. Just the other point about recruiters to know very clearly is that recruiters are interested in supporting the employer. The employer pays their fee, not the candidate. So their best interest is not for you, their best interest is the employer. That's where their focus is. So the only time when a recruiter will pay attention to you as a candidate is when they perceive you as the favorite, and then they want to make sure that you get the job. And that's an ideal situation, but it's rare. Okay. As I go through this, if you have any questions, by all means, write them down or jot them into the chat line. Okay. 30% of jobs are found through job postings. And you're probably looking at that number and going, are you kidding? Only 30% of the jobs are found through postings? And that is correct. And that would be job postings through Indeed, through LinkedIn, and also that includes corporate sites, corporate job pages. The interesting thing too is that not all entry-level jobs are being posted. It's because it's expensive and time-consuming to post a job. So sometimes the entry-level jobs that many of you might be looking for aren't available and posted even online at all. Okay, that leaves 55% of the job market that is hidden. Okay, it's hidden, and that's accessible through networking. So you're only going to get to that part of the market through networking. So networking involves outreach, it involves cold calling, it involves accessing people you know well and not well, it involves dialogue, it involves conversation, it involves putting yourself out there, and it's hard to do. And it's often scary, and it's often not your comfort zone. Not everybody is comfortable. Most people are uncomfortable networking. And as well, a lot of most young adults are very adept at interacting through technology. And so interacting via networking to find a job is just outside your sphere of experience. to make this networking challenge a little bit tougher is that you're networking with a different generation. So the group that you're networking with, often in their 40s or 50s, are very comfortable with networking. They didn't grow up with technology the way you did. So conversation and dialogue and in-person conversation is very comfortable for them. So that's what they expect of you. And that's a bridge that you're the one that needs to make happen, because they're going to be sitting back waiting for you to approach them. So networking is a challenge, and it's your best way of finding an opportunity. Okay. When I work with clients to help them identify their career direction and what makes sense for them, the first thing, obviously, I'm always interested in is aligning to your individual preferences, your aptitudes, and your interests. Okay, so you first, right? I'm always interested in who you are and what makes sense for you in terms of your preferences, aptitude, and interests. I'm also interested in understanding where you in your life have thrived and not thrived. That's a big thing for me, because I want to play to your strengths, and I'm not interested in putting you into a job or career situation that is proven to be an environment where you typically do not thrive. If you're in an environment where you thrive, you're likely going to have more chance of success in that job. Sounds obvious, but sometimes it's not. Notice how I'm not interested in happiness, okay? Happiness is a fleeting emotion. So I'm not really interested in ensuring you're happy. If you're thriving and you're successful, guaranteed you're going to have moments of happiness. So we're going after thriving. But there's one other element we're looking for in terms of job search, okay? And that is, we want to be sensitive to the market trends, okay? Certainly during the pandemic, in the heat of the pandemic, going for a job on a cruise ship, for example, not recommended, right? So if we are looking for jobs that are aligned to your individual needs, to where we know you'll thrive, to what's going on in the market, we're going to be that much more successful, right? Remember too that the job market is just like the stock market. It has its ups and downs, and those ups and downs vary by industry. So I'm constantly in that job market looking, researching, staying very much on the pulse. So something that was hot a while ago might not be hot now, or might be vulnerable now. So you need to be aware of what the trends are, particularly because of the pandemic, right? All right. So when we talk about coming out of a recession, a normal recession, okay, it's usually a linear curve. The recession is here, and then progression out of the recession across industry is usually linear, across industry, linear. Coming out of a pandemic, the recovery is what we call a K-shaped recovery. In other words, some industries have really struggled and may not recover at all. Or if they recover, it's going to be slow and it's going to be painful. That's the low end of the K, okay? However, there are many industries that actually, as a result of the pandemic, have actually grown and expanded and are doing amazingly well. And that's actually because of the pandemic, because of COVID. That's where we ultimately want to target job opportunities that are sustainable, where there's growth, where there's evolution and development. It's the green, it's that area that we want to focus when we start looking at jobs. Okay. All right. In the current and the post-COVID world, you're looking for jobs, therefore, that are sustainable and that are going to align to the new growth curves that are emerging by industry sector. All right. It's worth repeating. Jobs that are sustainable and that align to the new growth curves that are emerging by industry sector. So what I want to do is I want to talk to you about where the opportunities are, up with the new, right? And talk to you about those industries or give you examples of industries that are leading edge and innovative, that are growing at a stronger rate than many of the larger businesses and well-established companies, right? Larger, well-established businesses have absolutely been holding their own in the pandemic and coming out of it. But it's these leading edge and innovative businesses that are really showing exponential growth that might be where you want to additionally focus in your search, okay? So what I'm going to do now is put some numbers to that for you and show you what I'm talking about by some industry sectors, okay? So we're going to start with healthcare sector. So when we talk about the healthcare sector, in the traditional index, all right, we're talking about pharmaceuticals, healthcare equipment. We talk about healthcare providers and biotech. That would be what I would consider the traditional index. And if you look at the year-to-date growth, it's been about 2.6%. In the last year, it's been growing at 13%, holding its own, absolutely holding its own. But in the innovation sector of that, and ETF stands for exchange traded funds. So I'm looking at data that's coming from the stock markets, okay? So we're looking at DNA sequencing, gene editing, gene therapy. We're looking at targeted therapeutics, molecular diagnostics. All of those types of areas have in the year to date grown 18.2%, in the last year by over 208%. So with inflation at roughly 2%, you can see that our traditional areas are holding their own, in fact, growing quite well in the last year because of healthcare, obviously pandemic, but huge exponential growth in the innovative sectors. You see the difference? Yeah. Now, some of you in this call are saying, why is she talking about healthcare? None of us are doctors or nurses. We're business professionals. True, but it's business professionals that work with all of these medical geniuses to bring their products to market. Somebody has to work in operations. Somebody has to be the CFO. Somebody has to be the CEO of these organizations that handle marketing, distribution, and partnership arrangements, obviously. So that's where all of you can come into play within the healthcare sector. All right, moving on to the next sector. Financial services. Actually, I just want to make sure I didn't miss one. Okay. Financial services. So the traditional index, we're looking at banks, insurance companies, diversified funds. And when we look at the numbers in year to date, I've split it by Canada and the US because the numbers are actually quite significant. In Canada, the year to date has been 4.2% growth. Actually, in Canada, those traditional indexes in financial sector has actually operated at below inflationary levels, coming out now for sure. In the US, doing much better at 6.4, but in the last year, really pretty much in line with inflationary trends, okay? However, in the innovation sector, digital wallets, mobile payments, artificial intelligence, and e-commerce, look at the growth rates. Year to date, 23.5%, 168% growth in the 1 year rate, right? I think it's fascinating. Of course, any of you who want to tell me to get a life, that would be fine. Okay, industrial sector. The industrial sector, in the industrial sector, I'm including machinery, aerospace, defense, industrial conglomerates, road and rail, okay? And when we look at the traditional indexes, year to date, pretty low. In the 1 year, about 8.5% growth. In the innovation sector, when we start looking at robotics and automation, 3D printing, autonomous transportation, I'm talking about self-driving vehicles there, energy storage, space exploration, growth of 39.3% year to date, 140% in the last year. Okay, so I've shown you 3 specific industries. Let's take the broad index. And when we take the broad index, which would include secular trends being long-term trends, long-term market trends, 5 years stability. And we look at innovation and we look at clean energy, which I love. Clean energy is hot, hot, hot. You can see the statistics. The growth rate in Canada, 6% year to date, 6.2 in the traditional indexes, a little bit higher in the US. But in the diversified innovation trends, we're seeing growth at 133, and in clean energy specifically, 149% growth. So even when we take a broader slice and look across industry, we're still seeing those same trends when they're split between tradition and innovation sectors. All right. So the question you might ask is, why is this happening? And it's happening because of user demand that's being accelerated by the pandemic and physical separation, right? We know that there's been a way greater need for technology solutions to substitute for real life. And we're seeing that in shopping, in working out, exercise, dining out, banking, entertainment, and in all modes of social connection. This has created the huge growth and need for hardware, software, broadband, computer chips, delivery services, right? It's just created a huge need for technological solutions in all of these areas. When we look at technology advances, we're seeing infrastructure changes that is advancing efficiency in many industries, right? So we're seeing increased efficiency as a result of changes in infrastructure. We see that specifically in artificial intelligence, machine learning, or what we call also deep learning, access to cloud computing. We see data lakes, the move to raw data, huge big data kind of analysis, and data processing speeds going up and data transmission speeds being increasing. So all of this is creating change and evolution and efficiency and the opportunity for so many new industries to take hold, okay? So that begs the question, where are the jobs, right? So we know the traditional sectors are holding their own, but it's the innovative industries that are growing. And of course, as a result, that's where we'll see some great job opportunities. We know that, and in fact, in the clients that I've landed and been working with, the traditional industries are a little bit more cautious about taking on a lot of new people. They aren't growing careers as fast. So promotional opportunities are a bit longer. So it takes a bit longer to grow. Salary levels are staying relatively a little flatter. In the innovative areas, we're seeing a lot more growth. We're seeing a lot more promotion. Salary levels, not necessarily way more competitive yet, because some of them are still getting their feet, but still way more opportunities for growth and development. So if I were to look at where I've seen a lot of uptake, okay, I'm seeing it, essential service workers have definitely done well and stayed solid. Pulp and paper, now that's an interesting one. I've just been talking about technology. I've just been talking about digitalization. How can it be that pulp and paper has done so well through the last couple of years? I'll tell you how. It's because I bet every single one of you in the last couple of weeks at some point got a parcel delivered to their door in a cardboard box with packaging and packing paper. That has driven a huge growth in pulp and paper. Just the whole delivery mechanism for, shopping, for example, right? Lifestyle. We know that home exercise equipment, online videos of all sorts, Peloton, for example, has done very well. Any kind of home gym type of facility has been doing very well as a result. People used to go to gyms. They're still going back to gyms as things have opened up, but are some people deciding that they've changed their routine and are going to stick with a more in-home solution? Yes, they are. So lifestyle changes are huge. Certainly in IT, hardware and software, huge growth. Digitalization, which I've been talking about, health diagnostics and innovation, anything in healthcare is huge. Logistics and delivery, lots of change and growth. Clean, green, sustainable energy, big growth there. Electronic and autonomous vehicles, I've talked about driving vehicles, robotics and 3D printing, e-commerce, and artificial intelligence. And kind of last on my list was cybersecurity. This is not a finite list. I'm just giving you some good examples of where I'm seeing a lot of solid growth and expansion. Okay. All right. I just need you to know, okay, that your career is going to evolve. And that first job is not your only job. It's not like that first job is you're going to jail and they're throwing away the key. You've got to think stepping stones. So be aware that that first job, don't be afraid to take a risk. Take an intelligent risk, but don't be afraid to take a risk on that first job. It's likely not going to be your job for the next 30 years. And so you need to think about stepping stones. That first job will be the stepping stone to the next one. Gives you a comfort level, I think, knowing that that first job isn't forever. Remember, you need to be fearless. You need to be inventive, and you need to be persistent. That means look elsewhere, look differently, and make sure you're keeping the faith. So that was my presentation. I didn't want to take all of our time up in presentation mode. I wanted to make sure that there was time for us to go to Q&A. So that's how to reach me if you have any questions or you want to connect. And what I'm going to do now, David, is I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll see if there are any questions. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And Daphne, I just wanted to highlight that all the students on this call are have backgrounds in the STEM disciplines, not business. So science, tech, engineering, and math. So a lot of the industries that you speak of, they will be the technical experts who will be sought after in the coming years.
That's great. And remember that because of the evolution, right, in the industry, with everything becoming technologically relevant, STEM actually touches every industry now, right? Like it touches every industry, which is kind of interesting. So I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Okay.
And I am opening the floor to questions. I'll go to a first question that came from someone who was not able to attend, but asked David if this question could be asked.
Yes, from Vaidehi at University of Saskatchewan, who's in bioinformatics.
Yeah. Do you want to ask the question, David, since you we've got you?
Oh, sure. Sure. I'll just read that on behalf of Vaidehi. It's here. In today's world, there are newer, more efficient and recommended ways of presenting a resume. Are there? Examples would be a website. Doesn't want to jump ahead with just the website example, but provides it as an example, perhaps of a more non-traditional way to present a resume. So what are some of the newer, more efficient ways, recommended ways that students can break through?
Sure. So first of all, I first of all just want to say that I recommend not leading with a resume. So the resume is largely a due diligence document. It's got your name, it's got your phone number, it's got basics on your education. Many of you don't have years of experience with many corporations. So the resume is largely, do you check the key boxes, like having a university degree, and how do I reach you? So, the danger in looking for a job is to spend an inordinate amount of time on the resume, whether that's a paper version or an electronic version. I worked with a young adult, or have worked with many young adults who have done beautifully creative resumes, just on that side of it. And they've had no success. And then we've taken that resume and we've streamlined it and we've made it very clean and very simple and very easy to pick up the core facts, and they've had success. So I just want to share that the resume is going to be stronger if it's simpler. a lot, fewer bells and whistles around that resume, clarity of the information so that it can be picked up in a 30-second scan is going to be more effective than something very fancy. That's number one. The idea of a website or a portfolio of sorts, depending on what kind of industry sector you're going for, are helpful, but they don't replace the core traditional resume. They just don't. And so I think if you want to have an Instagram site or a website that, you know, hosts your information, certainly have a LinkedIn profile, but they don't replace the clean, simple resume that has the facts, easy to pick up. Do you want to navigate the Q&A, David? Or
Yeah, by all means. So we'll read the first one from Aiden, who's at UBC. Thanks for the wonderful discussion. I was wondering if you could provide some examples of the inventive aspect of job hunting.
sure. So in fact, if you're open to it, I can share a story with you. I'm going to share what I call the Calvin approach. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to go to a document, if I may. I'm going to go here. Let's see if I can do this. Sorry, I want to get out of here. There we go. I'm going to go to here. Talk about okay, so I'll talk about I like to always tell stories. David, is this showing up visually?
Yes.
Good, excellent. Everyone can see this? Perfect. Yeah. So a client of mine whose name is not Calvin. Okay, I always anonymous everything I do, but this is a story about Calvin. Okay, so he approached a company, and he started with an email that basically spoke about what he liked about the company. He was very direct about wanting a job in the field, wanted to connect, was a business graduate, and looked forward to speaking. Just because of the way the outreach was written and the timing of it and so forth, he actually got a meeting with the CEO. And in the meeting with the CEO, he was told that there was an actual role for someone like him, and he sent a thank you note, and he got no further responses. Okay, so he had a second attempt, and he checked in, and he said, it was great speaking with you, 100% capable and qualified. I just want to follow up on what happened with the management team, express my enthusiasm. It's no response. Okay. So now he goes on for his third attempt, right? And he says, hey, just checking in with you. I'm poised and ready to jump in, whatever works for you. Still not getting anywhere, right? So now what happens is he makes a fourth attempt, and every time, and I'm going through this very quickly, but every time he makes an attempt, he gets a little friendlier. He gets a little bit more bold in his outreach, right? And basically at this point in his fourth attempt, he says, look, whatever the direction change you're doing, I have no doubt I'm the right person for the job. So he's getting really in your face, right? Still no response. Finally, okay, he says, hey, how you doing? And he's now picking up on some research that he did about the company to show that he's staying informed. And basically says, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that whatever the direction taking, I'm the guy for the job. And you can see he's just becoming more and more bold. Finally, the CEO gets in touch with him and connects him to HR, and he actually ends up securing the job. So it's really the key takeaways from this. And I've gone through it very fast because really the devil is in the detail. It's all in how Calvin worded each email, so carefully written. He was persistent, right? He kept the faith and his energy and his enthusiasm up. He was not easily disheartened when he was told no. He just didn't take no for an answer. He was inventive in his communication. Every time he communicated, he had a different angle, a different point of view, but always coming at it from a positive. And again, I just emphasize the point about it's just a foot in the door. It didn't matter that the analyst role wasn't what he was looking for. Maybe it was just all about stepping stones. So it sort of gives you an example that being inventive is not saying no. I'll give you another example. There was a woman who tried to connect with somebody who basically was ignoring her. And so the subject line on the email was chimneys. This was somebody who was actually looking for a job in the educational sector, and the subject line was chimneys. And her opening line was, as you know, trying to reach you, and short of coming down your chimney, which is something I plan to do shortly, I would love you to respond and get hold of me so that we can connect. Within 2 hours, this woman got a response and a meeting was set up 2 days later. So being original, being inventive like that will get attention, but always professional, always respectful, but being inventive that way. Does that help maybe answer that question, do you think, David?
Yeah, those are some great examples. Thank you. Let's go to Jennifer's question. Jennifer's going to be starting at U of Alberta this year. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. What advice would you give to a younger first-year university student hoping to start networking with companies in the job market? How can we approach companies and start establishing meaningful connections?
So the first line of defense is always people you know, right? So definitely tap people you know. And actually, when you think about people you know more people than you think. When you start thinking of people you know, people your parents know, people the friends of your parents know, neighbors, people who have coached you, past professors, friends that you have, their parents' friends. If you tap, first of all, the people you know, that would be your first line, because these are people who already love you, who already are your greatest fan. You don't have to prove yourself to those people. That would be first. Then if you want to start approaching companies on a cold call basis, I'm a big fan of top-down approach. So I like to see approaches from the CEO down, right? Because if you get a bite from a CEO, then when you go to the next level down, you can say in your subject line, referral to you from the CEO, right? And it's always about the referrals in that you're after. So from a networking perspective, start with people you know, then go top down, and always work the referral network. So always work with one person referring you to somebody else within an organization.
Great. Jessica Dean, who's at University of New Brunswick, thank you so much for all of your advice in searching for jobs. I personally just finished up my first co-op term in mechanical engineering, and I was wondering if you had any advice on co-op in general.
Co-ops are tricky. I like co-ops because they give you work experience. And in an ideal world, if you like the co-op and you liked the company where you worked and they liked you, then getting hired out of a co-op is ideal situation, low stress, and the obvious route to go. If the co-op is finite, it's not going anywhere, then work with the people that you connected with through the co-op to see if they can recommend anybody tangential to their company or their industry who you could connect with. So when you're in a co-op situation, take advantage of the networking opportunities, make a note of every single person you cross paths with, and circle back to them after the co-op or during the co-op to make sure that you can leverage effectively from the connections you make in the co-op to other opportunities. So to me, if the co-op itself doesn't turn into an opportunity, leverage your connections from that co-op and that would be the best way of handling a co-op situation into a new job. David, if you think I'm not answering any of these questions completely, then please ask me a follow-up question.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps the person who asked the question or wrote the question in, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a follow-up, or thank Daphne for her response. Does that work for you, Jessica?
It does. I find like the co-ops are absolutely amazing in the sense of, and there I was taking down emails last week when I was on my last day of some people I got to talk to. I just feel awkward because it was in the defense industry of they're competitive in other companies of being able to reach out to those people and say, hey, I didn't quite enjoy this co-op. Where can I take it from there? Reaching out to other people in the company, but the company doesn't have too many opportunities is something I'm personally directly interested in. So I was just wondering if you had any advice on it, like in that kind of situation of it's kind of awkward, but I want to kind of take it from there because there were some great people I met.
For sure. So I have a rule. I have a kind of a rule that I follow, and I follow it for myself personally as much as I can, and I follow it. I recommend it strongly. Just as a rule of thumb, never say anything negative. Okay, so always positive, always positive. So even when you've come out of a really negative work situation, not that you have, but even the most toxic work experiences, turn it to the positive. So you would position it like, I had a great learning opportunity at ABC company, and just nature of the industry and how things were evolving. It was not the environment where I could stay longer term, but it was a fabulous, short-term learning opportunity. And that's how I would spin it. Okay, so Jessica, I would spin it from that angle. And in terms of the awkwardness, I think it's more awkward for you than it is for them. It's a small world. And within industry, most people know their competitors, actually. And competitors are often at the same conferences, they're often at the same events, and they become friends with each other. They really do. So, in some cases, some people might feel uncomfortable, but in other cases, it's all about, and you're going to respect confidentiality. So if you lead with respecting privacy and confidentiality, but just acknowledge that you're looking to still stay in the industry, who do they know? I think you'll be okay to leverage your contacts into competitors of the current company where you were doing the co-op.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll jump to Ronan's question. Ronan's at UBC. Thank you for your advice. What are some of the best, most efficient ways of networking?
So I know I just said not to be negative, but I'm going to disagree with myself, do it all the time. I don't like social media or LinkedIn unless I have to, okay? Because a lot of people, when they get LinkedIn messages, see it as somebody trying to sell them something, and they often discard a LinkedIn outreach without properly reading it, okay? So I worry if your main line of approach is going to be through LinkedIn, then I think you could find you aren't getting as many responses as you'd like to get, okay? I love LinkedIn, by the way, for a million reasons, but not necessarily for networking purposes in this context, okay? I like email a lot. I like intelligent, clever, concise, brilliantly written emails that are short. I like them when the subject line is a tease. So I would never start a email for a job search with looking for a job or, want to get a job working with you. No. I would do something innovative. So, for example, a client of mine and I'll always tell stories because it makes it more fun, right? We're looking for a job with the Bata Shoe Museum. This is a museum in Toronto. And she did some research on the executive director of the museum and found out that this woman actually ran a very interesting book club separate to the museum. So her subject line was not looking for a job, was not museums, was not anything to do with shoes. It was book club. And then her opening line was about some of the books that had been reviewed in the book club because she'd found that out online, and then segued into, who she was, and she'd love an opportunity to speak with her. So I'm big on not asking for jobs. I'm big on asking for advice, because if you ask for advice, it's a lot less threatening. If you ask me for a job, it's easy for me to say no. It's a lot harder for me to reject you if you're asking for advice. Now, there's a caveat on that, all right, that the person you're asking needs to have two criteria. They need to have what I call the networking gene, and they need to have that mentoring DNA. Not everybody is a natural mentor. Not everybody understands the value of networking or respects the young adult who's coming forward. That's why you're going to get rejected sometimes, but sometimes not so much. So I like the tease approach on an email. I like the personal outreach to email, because email addresses are hard to find in some cases. If you can get the email address, and there are ways to do that, I always find email addresses for everybody. If once you get a personal outreach on an email, and if you do the right tease in the subject line, and you've got a really well-written short email, you have a higher likelihood of getting a response rate. And then, of course, you might need to send that email more than once. That's a lot.
Great. How was that, Ronan?
Yeah, that was really useful. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Raven, who is also going to UBC this year, I believe, says, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Do you have any advice on exploring US job markets for experience and further networking? Of course, Canada is home.
Can I hear that question again, please?
Yes, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Do you have any advice on exploring US job markets for experience and further networking? Of course, Canada is home.
Yeah. So first of all, I work with clients all over the world. So it's not unusual for me to place a client in Sweden or Australia or Britain or the United States. I do it all the time. So that's a non-issue for me. If Canada is home, okay, then you need to think about the networking power of a job that you get in Canada versus in the US. A big obstacle in the US is going to be immigration status. So any employer that wants to consider bringing you in, if you don't have the immigration status, you are disadvantaged. However, there are certain visas, short-term visas, that you can acquire. And there are many ways of still getting an opportunity in the US on a short-term basis. There's a tendency that your network that you have in a US job will be US based. And so then when you come to Canada, you don't have a network, right? The big advantage of the US is if you're working at a US parent where there is a Canadian subsidiary. Love that idea. Get experience in the head office down in Wisconsin, Illinois, or wherever, and then get transferred to the Canadian sub. Great, love it, good concept. You just need to be cautious about, having the US on your resume is a differentiator, and that's always good. But it's not necessarily going to help you land a Canadian job.
How's that
For
sound,
sure.
David?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Awesome, good.
Okay, we have a question from Cyril, who's at Montreal, I believe. Many thanks for your presentation. What would be your recommendations to future-proof one's career?
So from today onwards, I want you to think about all the people that you connect with in your job. I want you to keep track of them, and I want you to add to that list, and I want you to maintain that network. If I were going to future-proof your job, your career, I would say preserve your network, preserve and build your network of people who know you, who love you, who trust you, who are advocates, who are your champions. Number one, in my own career, and you've heard my bio, it's fairly extensive. And even to this day, when I work with clients, I activate my very deep, broad network on their behalf when it makes sense and I can. And consistently, when I reach out to someone, and this could be someone I haven't connected with in 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, I still get immediate response rates from them, to help me, to help my client, whatever. And that's because I've protected my network. It's because I've respected and admired everyone I've ever come in contact with. I've always protected my reputation. I've never done anything unethical. I've always behaved with integrity, professionalism, gratitude, huge gratitude. If you bring that to the relationships that you have as you move forward in your career, you will always have those relationships to fall back on, and those people will always have your back, and they will always leverage you and introduce you to new opportunities. That would be number one. The second thing I'm big on is being opportunistic. I do not believe in false loyalty. So companies, however much they may love you and appreciate you, will not hesitate to terminate you. If you're redundant, if you slip up, if there's an acquisition and they don't need you anymore, they won't hesitate to terminate you. So with that in mind, absolutely, you need to be committed in your career to the employer you work with, and professional, and and have a good work ethic. But don't go into that job environment not thinking about yourself. It's you first. And at the point when the job isn't meeting your needs, or you're not feeling valued, or you're not learning, or you're not growing, or you're getting passed over, that's when you need to start reevaluating your opportunities for yourself. So think about yourself first, okay? And the third factor that I'm going to add to that is I need you to remain agile. You've heard that word, I'm sure, when you talk about executive function, the necessity for agility, flexibility, be open to an opportunity and don't be afraid to take it, right? Take a risk, stay flexible, stay open-minded. Do not fall into a pattern of rigidity. Keep stretching outside of your comfort zone. I would say those are three key things to future-proof your career.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was really insightful.
Here's a question from Dina, who's beginning at Waterloo. What are some vital questions you would advise to ask during career fairs to recruiters? Or how would you pitch yourself?
Those are a lot of questions. So vital questions to ask is one question. At job fairs was the other part of it, but there was a third part of that question. So David, I need you to repeat.
Yes. Or how would you pitch yourself? Was the second part to it.
Okay, got it. So it's, you know, what's really interesting about this whole job thing is you think that that the employer is interested in you, and actually they're not. They're only interested in you as it relates to their job and their interests. So for example, I'm going to go on a little tangent here. When you're looking at writing an impactful cover letter, you want to make it about their company, about their job requirements, and about their mission, vision, and values. That's the frame of your cover letter, not about you and who you are. It's about those four elements and where you fit in, right? Where you add value, where you align to them. See the difference? So pitching yourself, first of all, when you have to, I want a 1 or a 2 line, and you've heard this term, elevator speech, right? So I want something short, pithy, tight, that covers you really quick, because really you're going to get the job, not by what you are talking about in context of yourself, but in the questions you ask. So your first part about what are vital questions is really where your focus needs to be. People judge you on how intelligent your questions are, not on how much you can say about yourself in a sort of a lengthy speech. Job fairs, here's the problem with job fairs, okay? The person at the booth in the job fair is not a decision maker, okay? They're often someone relatively junior within the organization. So my advice on a job fair is get the business cards of as many people as you can. And again, leverage the contacts to the right people. That would be my goal in a job fair. In terms of questions to ask, again, you're asking of people who are fairly junior, so you're not really going to get a high level answer, but certainly if you can ask them, if you can express your interest in terms of career, and then who within their organization would they suggest you could network with, that would be the question at a job fair. All right. Backing up to the first question then was vital questions to ask. I'm big on asking questions in several categories. The first category would be about the business. So ask questions that show you've done your homework and that you're curious about the business they're in, something really intelligent. Notice that you had an acquisition about 18 months ago, and that the result of the acquisition led to the evolution of a new development in a new product. Tell me, how is that new product evolving? Is it changing the client base of your organization? Great question, right? Says a lot about you as a person asking an intelligent question. The second category of question I like is personal. So I noticed that you've been working at ABC Company for about 10 years. And before that, you actually worked in grocery. How is it that you made the jump from grocery to telecommunications? What caused that jump? And were you happy that you made the leap? And you can obviously get that information off the person's LinkedIn profile. And you're obviously going to do your homework on anybody who's interviewing you, so you can ask an intelligent question like that, right? You will not sound like a stalker. You will sound like someone who's interested in them personally. Remember, in any interview, the power is in talking less and listening more.
That's great. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, perhaps from Sarvesh. Hey, Daphne, do you have any advice regarding starting up a business? Are there any positions, jobs that you would recommend that would help gain the essential skills to keep the business afloat?
Okay, so I gather this question is coming from someone who's a budding entrepreneur. Would that be a fair assumption on my part, David?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I definitely work with clients to help them set up their own business. I do it all the time, but I do it rarely. And I do it because the criteria to being an entrepreneur are threefold. You need to obviously have a great idea and be able to establish a business model around it. So that's number one. The second thing you need to be able to do, and actually that's the part that most people can do, okay? They come up with the great idea And, with some good advice along the way, they can create the appropriate business model around it. Okay, and when I talk about business model, I'm talking about profitability metrics, customer base, repeat business, market share, pricing, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's number one. The second thing to be an effective entrepreneur is you must be able to sell and market your business. All right. This is where people fall down. They think they can hire somebody or partner with somebody who will sell the business for them. If you are the expert, but can't also sell and market what you do, you're going to struggle as an entrepreneur. And the third thing is, and this is also where people tend to fall down, is you need to be a brilliant administrator. Okay. You need to be able to run your business tight and efficiently so that you're spending very little time on admin and most of your time on selling your business and your market to the market. So when you think about starting up your own business, first of all, you need a reality bite on your own personal skill sets and whether really entrepreneurship is in your DNA. Okay. Assuming it is, okay, my recommendation is absolutely work for a company that already does what you want to do or is in that line of business so that you can learn everything about the business at a bigger, broader level, and then figure out how to take it down when you want to set your own self up. So having extensive experience in the field is going to be recommended before you do launch out on your own. You need credibility to be an entrepreneur. Now, that's not the case with Facebook or some of the other incredible individuals who were exceptional. But I would say with most entrepreneurs, having a strong base of credibility and experience and knowledge before you launch out on your own is important. And then you must have a very diverse skill set to be a successful entrepreneur, as I've described.
That's great. So we're just past the hour. So I want to thank Daphne on behalf of Schulich Leader Scholarships. And I hope you've gained some really valuable and practical insight today to apply to your next search and your career. So thank you everyone for stopping in and participating, and we will see you soon. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you again, Daphne.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. It was great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. Bye.